Hello, welcome back to the Story Art Podcast, Voices Unscripted, Stories Be Written, with your host, Sara Jaswal. Today I'm joined by a really special guest, and I'm just going to jump into the conversation. I hope you enjoy it. So, without further ado, today I have Raquel Nicolau, who is a trauma counselor who supports clients navigating anxiety, depression, PTSD, CPTSD, stress, self-esteem challenges, and nervous system dysregulation. Her approach is warm, compassionate, and trauma-informed, drawing from somatic therapy, mindfulness practices, EMDR, IFS parts work, inner child healing, and self-compassion. Raquel helps clients reconnect with themselves, build emotional safety, and develop practical tools for regulation, healing, and personal growth. Hi, Raquel.
Hi, Sarah. How's it
How
going?
good? How are you doing?
I'm pretty good, thank you. Very
Yeah,
happy to be here, so thank you for inviting me.
yeah, it's nice to have you here. I know we've spoken, haven't seen you in so
It's
long.
so long, yeah.
Yeah. For anyone who's listening or watching, Raquel and I actually went to counseling school together several years back now. It's crazy how much time has gone by, Raquel.
It has been, yeah, it flew by, so.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how I know Raquel, and we went and did a deep dive into our program together, and we really connected and became friends during that time as well. I'll have a lot of funny stories throughout those years.
That's for a different podcast.
Yeah, that's a different podcast on its
Yeah.
own. Today, Raquel's gonna share her experience, not only with counseling, but also just as a preface, and I guess just let you know what the podcast episode is going to be about for anyone who's watching and listening, is that Raquel was diagnosed with breast cancer a few years ago. And her story is just one that is so powerful and unfortunately something that's really common and a lot of women can relate to. And so I wanted to bring Raquel onto the show to share her lived experience and what that was like. And, you know, being in this new profession and new career as a counselor, and then literally having Raquel, your world kind of turned upside down completely out of nowhere. And so that's what we will be talking about. That's a big part of the conversation. As always, listen with discernment. If it brings up anything for yourself, any big emotions or anything, do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And this is Raquel's lived experience, so it likely will be different than your experience. There might be some parallels within your story and her story, but really just bringing this to the forefront to normalize that we all go through life, and talking about chronic health, which of course is a big one. I talk about that a lot on the show because that's my own personal experience, but also a lot of people are struggling right now with just different aspects of their health. So even if you're not navigating breast cancer or know someone who is, I think there's a lot that can be pulled from the conversation that we'll have today. So just wanted to put that out there before we go into the story. So Raquel, how about we start off by telling a little bit about yourself outside of being a counselor? Your bio is beautiful. That's really great, that the work that you're doing. Just tell us about yourself, who you were as a person, any fun facts, anything that you want listeners to know about you outside of counseling and or even your diagnosis before we go deeper into your story.
Sure, no worries. Thank you. Yeah, so I am a single mom. I have a beautiful teenager who decided to live in Europe with her dad. So I live in North Van now. I love the outdoors, bringing my brand new puppy outdoors for hiking and being by the water. I love nature and I love music and love to socialize with people. In
Lovely.
a nutshell. So,
Yeah. Do you still, I don't know if you mentioned, do you still rock climb?
I do,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. Not as much as before the diagnosis, but definitely want to. It's definitely one of my biggest passions, and want to go back to that. And photography also is a pretty big part of things that regulate my nervous system. Yeah,
love it. You
yeah,
got to find what works, right?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. You were known for rock climbing. I remember that when we were in school as well.
Back then I was climbing, that was my peak. I was climbing quite a lot, like almost daily. It was
Yeah.
a pretty good, good
Yeah.
times.
Cool. Well, yeah, thank you for sharing. I think it's always nice that we get to know a little bit about the person outside of their profession and their, all of that.
True, yeah,
I
we're
find
much
it
more
really,
counselors, right?
yeah. And I find it just really helps us to connect with one another. I like hearing about that when I'm listening to other people's podcasts and stuff. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course, yeah.
Let's go right into it. So normally I bring the counseling aspect of things near the end of the episode, but I think it's really important to start off with the counseling just because it kind of leads into your diagnosis and, you know, being on quote unquote the other end of it. I'm curious, why did you choose a career in counseling? And did you do anything prior to counseling, or did you always know you were meant to be a counselor?
That's a complex answer. But basically, I think I've always been that friend that everybody would come and talk to you. I think I am a good listener, and I genuinely care about people. I did many things before becoming a counselor, but one of the things that I think made it clear for me was that I wanted to become a counselor was back in the day, about 15 years ago, when I was working in the Downtown Eastside as a support worker at women's shelters. We weren't counselors back then, but we provided a lot of emotional support. And it was the part of the job that I loved the most. And back then, I'm like, okay, I really want to become a counselor. And that wasn't possible because of my pregnancy until COVID, when life kind of sent me to that direction again. So I'm very, very happy that I was able to finish that, to accomplish that goal. And I think I wouldn't be the counselor that I am right now if I hadn't gone through everything that I went through in those 10 years, basically. I think things happen at the right time as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So now we're several years out of being counselors and you've been working. How has sitting with other people's stories, pain, vulnerability, the challenges that we all go through, trauma, grief, suffering, tragedy, all of that, how has sitting with other people and their experiences changed the way you see the world, you see yourself, and the way you see others?
Oh, God, that's a great question. First of all, I could spend hours talking about this, but it does change the perspective that you have, you know, of life, and it puts everything into perspective when you sit with other people's stories, and it's a humbling experience, right? It's very humbling. And I usually say to people, it doesn't feel like work. I don't feel I'm working because my heart fills with love and joy and gratitude for just being there. So it made me more grounded, more mature, more aware of my own, you know, life and issues and traumas and all of that, as well as it expanded my already pretty wide compassion and empathy for the human experience. So to me, I feel privileged, to be honest, that, you know, people choose to be quite vulnerable because, you know, the therapeutic environment is so vulnerable and people trust you, a stranger, basically, right? With their most vulnerable moments and feelings and thoughts and experiences. So it is a privilege, and I want to spend the rest of my life being a counselor because it took me a long time, but I finally found the thing that fills my bucket. Yeah.
I love everything you shared. And yeah, there's just something so special to be able to sit with someone, anyone, and to be able to be with one another. And, you know, I think that's the thing. Yeah, we're counselors, but we're human as well. And whether you're in a counseling role or not, of course, we're talking about counseling, even another human being.
Yeah.
I've always been drawn to that too. And I feel like you have too. And counselors choose this profession for a reason.
Oh yeah, you're
Yeah.
not there for, you know, the money or the status or anything like that. If you're a counselor, you're there because your heart is bigger than your chest, kind of thing.
And it's usually deeper rooted. Like it's
Yeah.
way back, like you said. And again, I think to normalize that we all go through something, and how many people, especially now in the climate and the day of age we live in now, how many people are suffering alone.
Oh
And
yeah, 100%.
it's so sad and it's so heartbreaking, and we're all doing life for the first time. Every single one of us, and everyone is just trying to do their best and trying to just keep afloat, and life happens, and it's so important to have someone to talk to and speak to. Yes, family and friends, and you need to have the right people, but especially professionally, right? Like
Yeah.
as a job as a counselor is to be there and hold space for you and validate your experience, also challenge you as well and see where you're missing your blind spots and whatnot, but really have someone objectively be able to sit across from you. I always say friends and family can be great support, but they're too emotionally invested.
Exactly.
And we carry each other's pain as if it's our own kind of naturally. No one wants to see their loved one hurt. So having support such as a counselor, I think is so needed. And I truly have this belief that everyone needs therapy at some
Yeah.
point or another. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like we are counselors and we have our own therapists, right?
It's actually, in my view, it's a privilege. It's a gift to be able to have a counselor and get to know yourself and work on whatever it is that you have to work on. But I think therapy is it's self-knowledge. It's a way for you to, like you said, see your blind spots and understand how you are showing up in life and in your relationships. And there's always space for improvement, and why wouldn't we do that, right? So
Yeah, so beautiful. I love that. The next question I had was because this is something that happens, and you talked about this off camera, but people often assume that counselors, that we have everything figured out, that life is all great for us. But we know that's not true because we are human also. And like I mentioned, we also have our own support system as well. What do you wish people understood more about counselors?
oh boy, I mean, that exactly, that's definitely that we're not by any means even close to perfection, whatever that means. But whatever that is. And I think it's we are humans, and we have that connection with our clients from a human level, not the, oh, I'm a counselor and you're the client, and that hierarchical kind of thing. I think we put our hearts in there more than maybe clients understand. And we, in a way, bring that home too. I don't know about you, but it's something that if I'm outside of a session and I see a book or something that reminds me of one of my clients, that client is in my mind. Like, I carry them in a way with me, if that makes sense. It's
Absolutely.
not like a cold thing, like, okay, we're done the session, so bye, and I won't remember you until the next week, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know how much clients maybe think that when once we're done the session. But yeah, I think just again bringing more humanity to the whole conversation.
And I love that so much. And I think it's so true. A lot of people think it's just a job and you're clocking in and clocking out. And
Far from
there's
it.
so much more that goes into that and into counseling, the before, the during, the after. And I know this can be such like controversial conversation when it comes to like, do you think about your clients after? What do you do? Do you reach out to them? This is obviously, if you're a counselor and you're listening, you know very well that there's such polarizing opinions on this. But I'm with you, Raquel. I think about my clients and things will come up. And if I'm wherever I am and I see something or I hear something, or when I'm like, oh, that actually reminds me of them, or I wonder how they're doing. You know, they shared this really big moment that was coming up for them or experience or a big whatever it was. And I'm like, oh, I wonder how that went. And I think to what you're saying, that's the humanity of it. That's the
Exactly.
human nature of it. Like,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine not being connected like that in the jobs that we do. It's so hard not to. And it's not to say we bring our work home in that sense and it like takes us out and that type of thing. I want to just make that kind of clear.
Oh, for sure. There's a line, and
Yeah, to anyone listening. And actually, in that same breath, sometimes that does happen. Sometimes I think that does happen depending on what your client is going through. And that's just, again, it's a human thing. I think that's normal. And
Oh,
so
absolutely, yeah.
obviously there's boundaries there. We have ethics to follow and you don't want to be too intertwined, but talking about what we're talking about in that aspect of we're human too. And of course, right? Like when catastrophes happen in the world and
Yes.
we're not even connected to these people and there's all these just world events that are happening, we can feel that pain so deeply and we don't even know who the person is. How many times when celebrities take, for example, when they pass away or they're hurting or they're sick, what does that do to them? Raquel has a little puppy, a brand new puppy, so we got a little bit distracted. But what I was saying was when celebrities pass away or someone's sick and we don't even know them, how hurt and how much grief people feel then, and you don't even know them. So, in respect to what we're talking about, imagine being a counselor and being that safe space for someone where they divulge the most deepest, darkest parts of them. Of course you're going to think about them. Of course you're going to, feel that and hope they're doing okay. And so I think that is one thing that it's just a normal thing to experience. And like you're saying, it's almost like you do feel privileged,
Yeah.
to be in that position. And it's not a hierarchy, like Raquel was saying. It's so coming from the heart, like so deeply. And I think that's just what makes the difference, and that's what allows us to connect to one another and to relate to one another. I think it's so beautiful, to be really honest.
Oh, absolutely. And I like that you touched on the boundaries, because even though we are human and we have our own feelings and all of that, and we think about our clients, but it's such an interesting, and I think you and I, as friends, we have talked about that as well, how much of a complex profession it is, because you have to be professional, but at the same time you're human, so we can't be just robots, but we can't cross the line either and allow this to invade us in a way to inappropriate interaction. So I think as counselors we have to pay attention to our stuff, so much. Hence why we are not perfect, why we have our own resources and our own therapists, because we are humans and we have our own blind spots and all of that.
Okay, let's move into your diagnosis. This is a big part of your journey the last couple of years. And so, can you take us back to that day, the day you found out that you had breast cancer? What do you remember about that time? Anything that you feel about that day that feels very relevant and important to share? What was going through your mind at that time?
Well, I mean, there's a bit of a sequence from the moment, because the way I found out, at least the tumor, was just by self-touch. I was just on a normal evening watching TV and I felt a lump. So in my mind, I'm like, I somehow intuitively I knew it was cancer. But of course, you have to go through the whole doctor's appointments and ultrasounds and mammogram and all of that. So from that day until the diagnosis, that was like 2-3 months between appointment and going to the city and having the ultrasound and then biopsy. So by the end of January of 2024, when I got the call from my doctor, and I had to wait for a whole month basically for the results, even though I knew in my gut that that was going to be the case. When you hear the words, yeah, the biopsy results came back and it's cancer. It's, Sarah, it's so hard to describe the feeling, because the ground beneath your feet just opens up. And I was so present, which is weird because usually we dissociate, right? But I think I was so hooked on my doctor's words. And I mean, she did kind of calm me down in the sense that it was a very common and treatable type of breast cancer. But you forget where you are. Like, I was just tunnel vision. I was just very connected to what she was saying. And I had just got out of the shower. She called me and I'm like, okay. And it was at the end of the day. It was unexpected. I was not having a good day. I was in the middle of a huge fight with my partner back then at the time. So my world just kind of stopped. And then from then on, life wasn't the same and I wasn't the same. But
Right. Wow. So from the time you felt the lump to the time you got diagnosed, so you said you got diagnosed end of January
end of January, I
2024?
got the call. Yeah. Yeah.
2024. So you were dealing with that for a few months, like with the
Yeah, it was
unknown.
around mid-October-ish that I remember feeling the lump. And I was used to, I know my body really well, and I am very in tune with my body. And even though it was less than 2 centimeters, it was like 1.9, but you could really feel it. It was actually significant. So in my mind, knowing my body, I'm like, yeah, this is, I think in a way I spent those 2, 3 months accepting it, even though I didn't have the answer yet. But I knew it. So I don't know. I think that type of connection to your body and awareness of your body, I don't know.
Which speaks volumes to the connection you have with your body. And when you're so in tune and in sync with your body, that, and most people are not. And so for you to share that intuitively you just knew, and that's important to be,
Yeah.
very in tune with ourselves. And that's mentally, emotionally, which we talk a lot about, obviously, but also physically.
Oh, yeah.
That is so, so important. My next question, you
Yeah.
answered it, was kind of, did you have an intuition about what was happening, or were you completely blindsided and shocked? But you definitely felt, as soon as you felt the lump, you knew that something was.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean the shock is not there when you get the call, like when you get the confirmation, like it's still like, oh my God. But the intuition, I think it's just the confirmation of the intuition, right? Like I knew that was going to be the case. And,
Yeah.
you know,
And, to your point, Raquel, to what you're saying, something that was coming through as you were sharing that was, you were saying you had just taken a shower and you're going about your day, and then you get that call. And I think that's so important because that's what happens. We
Yeah.
just never know, and you hear it all the time. Your life can change in a millisecond, just like that. One phone call. And yes, you were expecting results and whatnot, but it still doesn't change.
Oh,
Like
no,
you
it's
said, the shock, the disbelief, the grief, I can imagine what else was actually coming up for you in that moment when she had said that to you. Were there certain emotions, certain feelings, certain thoughts that were running through your mind?
I think it was such an interesting experience because it's almost like I didn't feel anything. Not that I didn't feel anything, let me rephrase this. I think the fear and the shock were so intense that I grounded myself, if that makes sense. So I stopped and I went into that survival mode of like, okay, let me take one step at a time. Okay, take a breath. And it wasn't like a freeze thing, but I was very in the present, if that makes sense, in the present moment. So when you, at least for my experience, when you get diagnosed, at least for me, the emotions come after. After the treatment, after the surgery, for me, came after. I think you get into a survival mode. Okay, what are the next steps? And you just go, because everything goes so fast from the moment you were diagnosed. 2 days later, I was at the hospital having a consultation with the general surgeon. So, from there, it was just like, you don't have time to think and you don't have time to feel much. I know a lot of people that kind of break down, which is understandable and normal. I didn't feel anything. And I never thought for a second throughout my entire journey that oh my God, I have cancer, I'm gonna die. Never. For some reason, I think I'm like, okay, cancer? Absolutely not. I'm gonna remove this, I'm gonna do whatever I need to do. And I think I kind of went into that, you know, brave persona kind of thing as a coping mechanism, right? That's, I think, where my personality is and kind of where I usually go in situations like that. I'm like warrior kind of thing. So I incorporated that and I'm like, all right, let's go. So
Right.
yeah.
That's, yeah, wow. And that just shows everyone handles things differently.
Oh, one.
And you're sharing someone like me would have broken down. That's my response to
Yeah.
heightened situations, life altering diagnoses and emotions.
It's
I
intense.
shut down. And it's not to say one is right or wrong. It's just
Not at
how
all.
our each unique makeup of our body and our surroundings and everything is how we show up in situations like that. And it just is. That's what I was curious to hear your perspective from it, of what that was like for you. And like Raquel said, this is what her experience was.
Yeah.
And mine was a complete opposite. It's like I
Exactly.
broke down and I go into worst case scenario. I go into, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, like this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And so,
Yes.
and the reason why I share that is to really give everyone who's listening is the contrast of
Yeah.
that and how everyone deals with things differently.
And
But good for you, Raquel, to step into that, like you said, that warrior energy, facing it. It sounds like facing it head on. Like you said, no cancer, we're going to remove it, we're going to do this,
yeah.
and we're going to just go step by step and take it one at a time and just power through what you
Yeah.
can.
I mean, you feel it later, but you know, at some point it comes up.
Yeah, of course.
But no, I agree with you. You know, we all have different ways of dealing with things. Now I have the privilege of seeing clients going through the same diagnosis, which it just fills my
Wow.
heart
That's
with love.
special and on its own.
And you know, with everything that you said, I have clients that broke down, right? That they couldn't deal with the diagnosis, and fair enough, right? It's not an easy, because a lot of people survive cancer, but also a lot of people die of cancer. So, you know, there's always that, oh my God. But I have so many good things to talk about cancer as well. Like, we're probably getting to that too,
We'll
but
get there.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So much there. I feel like we can go in so many different directions. But I love to hear that part of it, quote unquote. I'm doing air quotes if you're not watching. It's a good, because that term can be loosely thrown around, but we'll get to that.
And just a quick thing before we move on, when you ask about the different emotions and all of that, you know me quite well, and you know my sense of humor and my, oh, Sarah, you have no idea. I used my sarcasm and dark humor from day zero to this day. I
Yeah.
joked about my cancer and my journey and my everything from day one. And that's worth a whole episode, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, because it made a lot of difference.
I bet. In
Yeah.
what ways? I mean, since you brought it up, let's touch on that. In what ways did that make a difference? And the reason why I think this is so important, a lot of people use humor. And we also know a lot of times that's not healthy because we use that to deflect. We know that
100%, and that's
that
fair.
happens. However, it's not so much black and white like that because there are a lot of people that use humor, and I think humor is honestly needed. I think it's necessary depending on certain aspects. I think where it gets tricky and goes into more of an unhealthy coping mechanism is when you're constantly deflecting and you're constantly using humor and you have no access to your inner world, your inner emotions.
Yeah, no,
And that's where we want to obviously do the work and do therapy, is to unpack that. However, but what you're saying, and because I know you, I know that the humor is just simply humor, because you can't, what are you going to do in those moments, right? And so it's almost like, what can you control? You can't control the diagnosis or anything else. You kind of just have to go through the system and go through the motions and do step by step. But you can use humor to lighten the mood, if you will. But yeah, I'd love to hear your take on that.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I agree with your take on there's a healthy way of doing this and there's not so healthy way, because again, cancer is such a huge thing. If you don't have some sense of humor, it's gonna be it's a hard journey anyways. So in my case, I wasn't trying to hide or deflect or anything like that. It was what was keeping my head above water. And I was able to bring not only, laughter, but perspective, because when you are faced with your own mortality, oh man, things just, lose importance. So if you already have a sense of humor like I do, which I was so grateful that I had that, because my sense of humor and the jokes that not only myself but a lot of my friends around me, they know me, so they went into the joke with me, helped me to not drown and to not just fall into a huge depression or think about the worst case scenario. And not only that, I have a daughter. I'm a single mom, and I couldn't, not that I couldn't, but I chose not to go down that dark road because I had her. She needed to see that by me taking things lightly in a way, she would co-regulate with me. If I were, spiraling down, she would go with me. So that was that too. And maybe her being my life also helped me kind of, be that. So I think for me, it was a healthy mechanism to use humor, to be honest. So,
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't work for everyone, but I think there are levels of it. I think it's fun to bring humor into a really dark situation.
it lights things up and it helps you just go through the journey, because it is a painful, uncertain, fragile, vulnerable, and a thousand other different words. Just,
Yeah. And I admire what you shared because, again, we are very opposite, right? Like I mentioned, we're opposites in that. And I wish that I could be more light-hearted about things or make more jokes and more of that. Now, I mean, I'm so far out, but I admire that about you. I think it's important because, again, we can't control anything. And I think especially humans, myself included, very much me, I talk about this a lot, is I want control. I have this innate, I want control of everything. And when it comes to your health, yes, there's a lot that we can control and a lot of things, but there's also a lot I've learned that you cannot control. And so, like you said, you got to go through the journey anyways. It's really hard journey, and why not make it a little bit more fun and easy? And
might as well, right? Like, since we're here, since you have to, go through the worst thing, you might as well just bring some humor and some sort of joy.
So empowering to hear that. And
because you got a balance, right? And it's something that by bringing therapy as well, like to my clients, when they're going through a lot of, intense experiences and situations, and I'm like, okay, what is it? Okay, we're talking a lot about, of course, everything that is going wrong and all the emotions, and that's fair, great. But what's counterbalancing this? What can you do to add, some balance there? Because life is hard enough. Like, we need some joy too. If we have time to suffer, we also should have time to have some fun.
Absolutely. And I think what happens in our human brain is it's one or the other. I'm literally opposite of what you're sharing, so it's so relatable. Is having that. But what I've learned through my journey through therapy, and not even me receiving therapy, but obviously now being a therapist too, is life is meant to be a both and both experiences and emotions, the suffering, the pain, the heartache, the grief, the trauma should be felt equally as much as the joy, the happiness, the pride, the euphoria, like all of that is, we should be doing that simultaneously. And I think that's one of the lessons that life teaches us when we go through hardship. And you touched on motherhood, which I am going to get into that later in our episode, because I think that is so pivotal and so profound in your journey. Because like you mentioned, you are a single mom, and so going through something so life altering and having a daughter to take care of. And I like what you shared about that, is that you were also thinking about her at the same time, because if you said you were going to go down, she was also going to go down. So we'll get into that part of it, but let's talk about your surgery. So you did share with me you did have a double mastectomy. What was that experience like, and how did the diagnosis, so the months leading up to the diagnosis, and then from the diagnosis leading up to the actual surgery, how did that impact you? So now we're probably months from the beginning. You said October to the time you had your surgery. That's quite a few months that you had.
Yeah.
Let us know, how long was that time frame, and how did that start to impact you? We know how you felt at the beginning, but did anything change when it came to time to surgery? Of course, we know the physical component of getting a double mastectomy, but talk to us about mental, emotional, physical, all of it.
Yes. So, yeah, the surgery took place mid-April. And from end of January until then, it was a little bit of a hard time communicating and being able to schedule the surgery, because so I was given the choice to either do a mastectomy, either one or bilateral, or just remove the tumor instead of doing the mastectomy. Because, it's super common, breast cancer. So I had a few friends that had just gone through the same thing, and I had the opportunity to talk to them. But regardless, my feelings were of just doing the bilateral mastectomy anyways.
When you say bilateral, so for anyone who's listening who's not really familiar with the terms, can you just explain that to us?
Yeah, so bilateral just means you remove both breasts. So the cancer was just on my right breast, but I decided to remove both for a few different reasons. Fear of recurrency on the other breast, and because I also wanted to do the reconstruction, at least start the reconstruction on the day of the mastectomy. So the same surgery, right? So that's why to make sure that both general surgeon and the plastic surgeon were available and the hospital was available at the same time. It took a little while. The waiting was a bit nerve-wracking for me, because so you have the stage of the cancer, which is usually connected to the size of the tumor. So because mine was under 2 centimeters, it was stage 1. But there's also the grade of the cancer, which basically is how deformed the cancer cells are and how fast they're growing. So there's grades 1, 2, and 3. And 3 being the most deformed. And so my grade was 3. So that means that tumor was fast growing. So my feelings at that time was like, okay, I need the surgery yesterday. Why we can't wait 2 months or so? Why are we waiting that long? Which brought me to a whole discussion about the system, and we're not gonna get there. So anyways, after a few very intense phone calls, we were able to make sure that was scheduled. But I was afraid that the tumor would grow or spread, so those moments were quite hard for me. Yeah. I was actually happy when we scheduled the surgery. I went into the surgery happy, and I'm like, what? Get this thing out of me.
Wow, that's such a different take, because a lot of times there's so much fear, right, going into surgery. And like what you just said about you were not excited, for a lack of a better word, but yeah, get this thing out of me. It was more of that's how your outlook, it sounds like from everything you shared up until this point, is that was your outlook. It's like, yeah, it's okay, I have cancer, but like no cancer, you're not going to take me out is what your attitude and just the way you're showing up and sharing. It sounds like that even up until surgery. I think a lot of times we are so scared because of course we're going to be scared. I think that's so valid to feel that, right? But it sounds like your approach and the way you just handled that and your body reacted to that, your mental state reacted to that was, no, get this thing out. Let's get me healed and cured, you know, in a way is what it sounds like when you're sharing that. And I think that's just so powerful in itself when I hear you talk about it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think not only the fear, but also, again, because I'm very in tune with my body, to feel that cancer's like energy in my body. I'm like, I want this out. I wanted that, you know, I wanted the cancer out of my body. So I think I wanted to rush and get that thing out. And I was seeing the surgery as a good thing, not as a bad thing. Bad thing was the tumor. Surgery is a great thing because you're removing the tumor. You were removing the cancer. If you're lucky that it hadn't spread or anything like that, which we only found out once they were in there because they needed to see everything. And luckily, the margins were perfect. There was no even pre-cancer cells around. So I was very lucky with that. And they removed 5 lymph nodes from your armpit and biopsed that as well. And everything came back clear. But yeah, the surgery was a good thing.
That's so interesting. I love this so much because, again, surgery, I think that word in itself just feels so daunting. It feels so, it's like, it's so big. But the way you're explaining it and expressing it, it just puts a whole different perspective on it that I myself never even looked at it in that way. And I'm sure anyone who's listening, this is why I love having people on here and sharing their lived experiences. Because Raquel, that's so, like, I'm just amazed. That's so powerful. I'm learning so much from you sharing that. Really empowering and inspiring to hear that take, because to be honest, I don't think I've ever really heard a take like that, or a perspective, an outlook in what you're sharing, especially when it comes to the surgery. But when you break it down like that, it is so true. Like you said, the tumor is the problem. The surgery is the best part because you're getting to remove that in a way.
Exactly. Because I heard you saying, you know, surgery is so big, cancer is big, or at least cancer is bigger, you know. And of course, we do associate surgery with more of a maybe negative thing, right? But I think in that case, it's so positive because you're removing the problem, right? So I couldn't wait to get into surgery. And of course, I'm not invalidating or, you know, diminishing the impact of removing my breasts, which I had a whole, you know, it was my 40th birthday on March 2nd, and the surgery took place on April 12th. So I had a huge party celebrating my boobs, basically. So there was a whole grieving process and a whole, you know, acknowledgement of, you served me well. There was a whole communication and conversation with that part of my body. So again, me sharing the positive aspects of it, or how I managed emotionally, that doesn't invalidate, or I'm not dismissing the grief and everything else.
Of course. Yeah, I think there's...
I'm sure that people listening like, oh yeah, she took it like no.
No.
I was feeling both.
Of course, and that's what a big part of the show is, and the conversations that I have is, it's again going back to both experiences can be true, but we're so just programmed and conditioned, and just the way we are is that we can only feel, I don't even know why that is, and this is probably another conversation, another episode on its own, why we do that as human beings, but both can be true at the same time. So yeah, just for listeners, we're not making light of it, but at the same
No.
time, we're bringing just honest, open conversation about it, and both can be true at the same time. So if
Yes.
you're listening and you're going through it, but you're feeling the complete opposite and you're feeling really heavy and down and breaking down and all that, that's valid too. You are exactly where you need to
100%.
be, and that's okay. And
Yeah.
this is why I'm kind of bringing in my own experience. I know a lot of you who have been a long time listeners know my story quite intimately, but that's why I'm trying to bring the contrast, because Raquel and I are two very different people, the way we show up when it comes to our grief and our trauma and life-altering diagnoses. I want to talk about chemo, Raquel. So you had the surgery, you were moved, you had the reconstruction. Just for people who are listening, I know we hear chemo all the time. It's something that so many of us know about, but I don't think anyone can fully understand what that does to us and what that is unless you've lived through it, right? Like,
Yep.
and so could you take us through what a day of treatment may have looked like, and also the impact of that? And we are going to get into, because I think you did mention to me at some point you decided to stop the chemo, if I
Yeah.
remember correctly. So I want to get into that because I think that's very important. But before we go into that, could you just take us through what a day of treatment looked like and what that chemo experience was for you?
Yeah, for sure. So every treatment is different. I mean, every case is different. Patients have different types of treatment when it comes to chemotherapy. Just kind of wanted to put this out there. It's not like one recipe for everyone. So in my case, the requirement was preventative. The treatment was preventative because my cancer didn't spread anywhere, but because the grade was high, we had a specific test being done. And, long story short, they said that I am at high risk of recurrence if I didn't do any treatment. So what we decided to do was, the recommended treatment was to do 4 chemotherapy sessions. And so basically I would go to the hospital, and by the way, the nurses are absolutely amazing. Just wanted to point that out because they deserve a medal. And I received 2 different types of medication. Basically, each bag, because it's a IV, each bag would take about, funny how we forget, either half an hour or 1 hour each. I don't remember.
That's okay.
Yeah. But basically, I would just sit there with many other beautiful people going through the same thing, and receive that medication. We did have to, not have to, but they give you a lot of medication for nausea because it's one of the biggest thing. And my stomach is very sensitive, so even just thinking about it, right? So they do give a lot of medications for that, and then you sit there, have your treatment. So I was living in Squamish back then. I had to come to Lionsgate Hospital here in North Van. So I would drive myself, honestly, because it's okay. You are okay to drive. Worst case scenario, you have nausea, but it's manageable. You have all the pills that you take before and during and after if you need to. You don't lack medication. So it's very helpful because they do support you with everything that you need to. And so I would drive myself. The first treatment, a friend of mine from Squamish actually came with me, sat with me for a little while, and then she had to go. And then my partner at the time picked me up and drove with me to Squamish and would spend the weekend with me. So I would do the treatment on a Friday, and then every 3 weeks. So after 3 weeks, I would have to go back.
Right.
So the first day was relatively okay. After a couple of days, things would start physically to get worse. So not only the nausea, but also for me, I couldn't taste, like your taste buds just, because everything burns, like the sensitive skin. So your mouth, your throat, everything. So I had esophagitis, so I couldn't swallow. And the mouth sores and all of that after maybe 5 days. It's basically 1 week of hell, if I may say that. Like, it's one very intense week, and your energy just drops. I couldn't do much. Of course, it's cumulative, right? So every session, every chemo session, you get worse and worse and worse. So again, people are lovely. You have all the medications to support you and all of that. Surgery was hard, but I could take that kind of pain. Chemotherapy killed me. So your memory was right. I was supposed to do 4, and by the third one, I did the third one, and I couldn't get out of the couch. I couldn't get off the couch for 2 weeks. And I was lucky enough that my treatment took place on July and August, which was when my daughter went to Brazil to spend the summer vacation with her dad. So she didn't see me in my worst during this treatment, which I was, grateful for. So most of the time I was alone. The weekends, my partner would come and be with me. And not to say that, I had my community and all of that, but at the end of the day, like, it was me, myself, and I at home, right? It was just me. So it was a very lonely journey, but it got worse and worse. And I was internally conflicted because I'm like, okay, I don't have cancer anymore. We removed the cancer. It didn't spread anywhere. And I understand there are certain cells that they are not being, you can capture with CT scans and MRIs and all of that. So I understand the reason for the chemotherapy, but my body and I, we were like, why am I suffering for a big if? Because, the whole discussion was, okay, you have 30% chance of recurrence. And I'm like, yeah, but I have 70% chance of not. So which one am I going to choose to focus on? So that was a big internal thing. And my oncologist at the time convinced me to do it. It's okay, I did. I wasn't happy with it, but it is what it is. And I'm glad I'm alive and healthy and all of that. But the last session would be when my daughter would be back. It would be in September, so she would be back in school. And I'm like, if the third one knocked me out for 2 weeks and I couldn't eat, I wouldn't eat for 2 weeks, Sarah. It was so hard. I'm like, that's it. That's where I draw the line. And I called my oncologist and I'm like, I'm very sorry. This is not, if I have to die, I'm going to die happy. Like, bye. I'm done. So, and she supported me. She was, really, really great with that. And I needed time to recover and to rest before we would start another treatment, which was the hormone therapy blockers, which would induce menopause and all of that. So to finish that first question you had.
Wow.
Yeah.
Raquel, I'm just so blown away by your experience and the way you're sharing and talking about it. Even that part about, okay, well, you have a 30% chance of reoccurrence, but your focus was like, well, I have actually 70% chance of survival and not reoccurrence. And that was your focus versus focusing on the negative, if you will.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of us grasp on to that 30%. We grasp on to all the things that could go wrong, and we fail to, and not, this isn't right or wrong or bad, I'm just saying we fail to see the other aspect of it. But the way you just shared that, it's wow, like, well, okay, yeah, 30%, but I also have 70% chance of not. And I do believe, not always, and this might get misconstrued or taken out of context, is that what we focus on, what we put our energy towards, what we hyperfixate on, we bring that to fruition. And I just want to be very clear that I just don't want to get this,
No, I get it.
Taken out of context, but I do believe that. Maybe not all the time, But there are aspects, and I'm saying this because of my own personal lived experience with it. I truly feel like, just a side note to give you an example of why I feel that belief, is because I truly believe that with my vision loss, I let it define me so deeply. I
Yeah.
thought about losing my vision. I'm going to go blind. I'm going to like just lose my vision. In my brain, that's what it was doing. And the license aspect of it, I was like, yeah, it's going to happen. I'm just going to be driving one day and I'm going to just lose my vision or lose my license. And I thought about it so much. Like it was so ingrained in me. And I do believe, partly, maybe not, maybe I'll never know, but I do believe because I put so much focus on that, that I ended up losing my license. My vision started progressing over time, and I'm not saying that was the only thing, but to
Oh,
my
yeah.
point of, I do believe what we put our focus to, what we put our energy towards,
Yeah.
what we give more weight, is it does end up leaning that way. And so, to this point of, well, you have 30% chance or you have 70% chance, I think is just so pivotal. And you hear stories like all the time where doctors will say you have 3 months to live. How many times have people far outweighed that 3 month diagnosis?
Oh, yeah.
And I think there is aspects of it that we have control over. And again, I know this is not going to land well for a lot of people, but I truly, truly believe it. And it's not in every case. There's so much nuance, so much variable. There's so much. And each story, each body, each health condition, everything is so different. And as much as we say that there's so much that we cannot control in life, there is a lot that we can control. And so
Yeah.
I'm curious if you want to piggyback off what I'm sharing. Do you agree? Do you
Oh,
disagree? And I welcome either side of it.
oh my God, can we have 10 different episodes that you and I discuss about different things? Because just even with everything that we're talking here, there's just so much. There's a mind-body connection, which is the main focus of my work. And even, Dr. Gabor-Mate wrote a whole book about it. I don't know if you read The Myth of Normal, but oh, wow. There is a lot of correlation when you were talking about that, the focus that we put on. I think it was Tony Robbins that said that where focus goes, energy flows. And I don't know if maybe people interpret it that way, but it's not like a woo-woo thing. It's actually a scientific thing. It's a mind-body connection. And there's just so much that we're discovering more and more, like how the quality of your thoughts affects your body and your health and the development of your cells, or your vision or a cancer cells. Like so many, and people listening, if you guys haven't read this book, I 1000% recommend. It's a big one, but I couldn't put it down. It's absolutely amazing. So I'm with you 1000%.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we could talk. Oh my God, we need to have a part two, Raquel.
Oh, 100%. I'm down. Like, it's just,
Yeah. Um, And to that point is, yeah, we can think about the negative and think of all the things that go wrong. And the beautiful part of that is we could also do the opposite. And I've also experienced that is think about the positive, think about if everything works about, think about the most best outcome of a situation and get so rooted and grounded in that. Repeat it, affirmation, journal about it, think about it. The same way we do that about all the things that can go wrong in our life and all the heaviness and all the darkness, if we can flip the script and do it the opposite way and think about all the joy, the happiness, the best case scenario, and just start envisioning that equally as we do with the negative aspect of life, amazing opportunities come from that. Amazing abundance, just new doors, health, like everything else in your life just is exponentially better. And so that in itself, again, like Raquel was saying, this isn't woo-woo. This is factual. This is science. We talk a lot about neuroplasticity in therapy. It's 1000% possible. And this is why I'm sharing this. And I think this conversation is so important, especially with what you're sharing, Raquel, because that's the approach you took with this. You took cancer, faced it head on, and looked at not, of course, you acknowledge the things that can go wrong in this, but you also
yeah.
gave more power to the opposite of that. And I think that's the key difference. And so
Absolutely.
it's just Oh my gosh. Obviously, this conversation and topic is so close to home, but I just want to bring this to awareness because a lot of people don't know that. And so,
Yes. Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful.
And even, if we were to talk about from the perspective of your mind is constantly in that stress and sympathetic activation and all of that, what happens? The cortisol levels in your body just skyrockets. So that has a whole consequence in your body and your health and all of that. And because the brain doesn't know the difference between what's happening here and what's happening in your mind. Whatever you create here has a direct effect on how your nervous system responds to it, how your body responds to it. And that's why a lot of people not only meditate but do the visualization, because when you sit in that space, there's a lot of all the good positive neurotransmitters that come up in your state as opposed to survival mode. So again, so many things that we need to talk about.
So interconnected, but I love it.
Which is my passion in the work that I do.
I'm so passionate about these conversations, and I bring in both my personal experience and then also the professional. And that's why I speak to a lot of my personal components of my story, because I just find it so relatable. And that's where a lot of my work is informed from also. I think the combination. Okay, let's get back to the chemo. I love this though. This is why the podcast, you guys, whoever is listening and has been here from the beginning, this is why this podcast was created. To have real, open, honest, just raw conversations, right? And
we talk about those things for hours.
So nice to talk to you, Raquel. Chemo. I wanted to just touch on something because I think everything that you shared around the chemo, what stuck out to me was the words quality of life. I think a lot of times we think surviving is just about the treatment itself, but it's not. Treatment is one aspect of, say, a cancer diagnosis, but it's also about protecting our quality of life, weighing out the pros and cons. And at some point or another, we have to do that. Is this worth it? And weighing out, balancing it out, is it worth it? And with you using your 30 to 70%, we kind of weigh that out, and it's like, yeah, the chemo might be helping, but where's my quality of life? There's a very big imbalance. It's not even that it's a little bit, and then you're like, okay, maybe I can tough it out because it's one more round. But when you think of it, when you think of how much of an imbalance it is, that's when you come to a point, is it worth it? And so I just wanted to add that bit of information because quality of life is so, so, so important. And I think we, as a collective, need to start paying maybe more attention to that when it comes to that. And again, this is a whole other conversation, but when we're on our deathbeds, we have family members on their deathbeds, friends, and we want to hold on to them because of course we do. Yeah. But then you have to weigh out the pros and cons and what's their quality of life like. And I've had to experience that personally with my grandma who's passed away. What's the quality of life, right? My parents had to make decisions, or my mom did when my mom's mom passed away, and her siblings and what have you. But it comes to a point, like, they're suffering, they're in pain. Is it worth it? How much more time is it going to get? They're in agony. So that's, of course, a different aspect to what we're talking about, but similar because it's talking about quality of life. So I just love what you shared, Raquel, because you basically had come to a point where you either do your final round and you are not okay and it takes you out for so long, or you just stop where you're at and your quality of life then gets better. And
take the risk, because with everything, there's a risk, right? So exactly what you're saying. For me, I decided to take the risk of not doing, like, whatever the consequence would be, not doing the last one, for the quality of my life. Because also, again, I was alone. My daughter was coming back. I needed to take care of her. I could barely take care of myself. And so at some point, you need to choose. And chemo, I shouldn't say that, but maybe the majority of understanding when you don't go through that is maybe you suffer during the treatment, and then once you were done, then you're fine. And you could not be far from the truth, because it takes sometimes a couple of years for you to actually go back, because chemo kills the bad stuff but also the good stuff, right? All your stuff, like your entire health just goes. It took me, okay, now we are in what, couple of years after that. I can say to you that only now I am 80% back.
Yeah, that's your 2 years out. So if that was 2024, we're end of July 2026. So you're about 2 years from the chemo, basically.
Yeah. I still have days that I just have to cancel all my clients or commitments or whatever, because the tiredness is just so much, and the brain fog, and it extends for easy a year and a half. Easy.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
much. Yeah. Let's talk about grief because, of course, grief is a big part of the work that I do. It's what I've specialized in. And also, there's grief in everyone's story. Beneath everything, everyone has grief in some which way or another. I have a lot of guests come on here and share a lot about not just physical death, but a lot about non death losses. And your story, of course, there's so much grief. You've already touched on aspects of it. Could you talk to us about the grief that you've experienced? I guess one of the biggest ones I would think are when we talk about secondary losses when it comes to identity, even when grief. And I know you and I talked about this on the phone a little bit ago, but what would you say about grief in general with having cancer and then going through the grief? And then also when it comes to identity, in what ways did breast cancer change your sense of self, your sense of identity?
You know, honestly, I think, at least for me, the biggest grief is the identity, because that's such a hard topic, in the sense that I'm still figuring out as well. I'm not the same person. So there is the death of Raquel before cancer, and then I don't even know if I crossed a bridge, and I don't even know if I'm already on the other side. So I am on the other side of treatment ish, because hormonal therapy goes for 5 years. So I'm still going through a lot of not active treatment, which is what we call. But I think that the intense emotions of the grieving of who I was, I've been through those. But I think grief, as you know, comes and goes. And I did see myself not long ago, meaning a couple of months ago, just looking at photos of me from back then when I was climbing a lot. And I even looked differently. And you are at loss how you feel. And I'm like, who am I? Like, what's going on? What happened? Because again, cancer, everything goes so fast. And I can't believe it's been 2 years. I blinked and 2 years happened, and so many things changed, because also that happens too. When you go through cancer, in most cases, your life in general also changes, because you see life in different ways and you prioritize different things, so you make different decisions. So who you were before and where you were and what you were doing, the majority of people that I have talked to, and even of course myself, it's a rebirth in all aspects. So I think, I don't know if I'm answering your question, because my brain is just kind of going to 1,000 different places, but I don't know. Sorry, I kind of lost myself.
No. I think you beautifully shared that. And that's what grief does. That's what cancer does. Like you said, you've mentioned to me too, is the level of brain fog and memory lapse. And it's a
It's,
real thing, not just with
yeah,
cancer, but with grief too.
yeah.
Like, it rewires us. But I know I'm following. I hear what you're saying. And there's a before and there's an after. And
Yeah.
that part is really hard to grapple with. And that loss of identity, like you said, that big question that we all face at some point is, who am I? Who's Raquel?
I think cancer gives you a blank canvas. You know, you can start over, basically. So you go, okay, I can do anything in a way, right? Like, I can do anything. I'm not who I was before. I'm different, even physically. I'm physically not the same. And so even the integration part of everything that you go through takes a while. It takes time for you to get used to the grieving, to get used to the changes and all of that. So even the integration part of it takes a long time. But then, at least to me, it feels like you have this brand new chance in life to do whatever you want to do, because also you learn that life is short. I moved towns. I chose to get a puppy. I have different friends, and you learn how to set boundaries beautifully when you have cancer, because you have to say no, and you have to kind of preserve yourself and your well-being and mental health, right? So there's grief in that as well, like even the environment that you were before, and with everything there's the pros and cons, right? So yeah,
Thank
I'm
you for
still figuring
sharing.
out my grieving
Sorry?
process.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know it's hard to talk about that, but I really appreciate you sharing your heart and vulnerability so openly and freely because it's not easy and allowing us into parts of your story. And I think it's okay. And if you're listening, this stuff takes time. And
Yeah.
sometimes you're years out, like 2 years out for Raquel, and you're still trying to figure it out. You're still
Oh,
trying to figure out what does grief even mean or look like for me. And
yeah.
that's just part of the process. And so, yeah, thanks, Raquel. Let's talk about motherhood because I think that's also important and you've touched on it. And not only are you a mother, you're a single parent and you have a daughter. How did you balance being a mother while also then allowing yourself to be someone who needed care, who needed treatment, who needed support? Could you shed some light onto that? I know you've touched on that your daughter was away with her dad for a little bit of that, so I know that did help because you
Yeah.
didn't have to take care of someone else when you were bedridden basically for that time as well. Talk to us about that a little bit. So for anyone who's listening, maybe they are a single parent or maybe they're a caregiver and they're having to care of other people, but then they also have to take care of themselves. Can you shed some light onto that from your perspective as a mother and also a single parent?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely a tough one because even if you have a partner, it's still pretty difficult and challenging, right, to go through that. And like you said, I did have her dad that coincidentally the timing of her vacations and time with him aligned with the treatment, so that was good. And I other than that, my parents came from Brazil for about a couple of months during the surgery to support me and my daughter. So I couldn't have done anything also without them. So I'm eternally grateful for them. In my community in Squamish, I had a lot of support, not only with friends taking care of her and taking her for play dates or sleepovers or just having fun and just being that support. Not only the practical part of it but also emotionally, because it was hard to manage my own emotions and worried about her. And like, she's a child, and I mean, now she's a teenager, but I think I was grateful that she wasn't maybe 4 or 5 years old. That would have been probably harder to deal with. So she did understand a lot of what was going on. And there were times, especially coming back from the hospital after the surgery, I would never forget her face looking at me and looking at my breast, because the reconstruction wasn't finished. That took several months, but I was not flat, but I was all kind of wrapped up and with bandages and all of that. And a lot of volume that used to be there wasn't, right? So I remember her being so scared, looking at my chest, and she was pale, and I was in pain with drains and all of that. And I was trying to walk and sit on the couch next to her, and she was holding and holding and holding, and she was scared and looking at me. And I'm like, it's okay to cry. I'm okay. I'm here. See, I'm fine. boobs will come back. And I kind of made a joke because, again, right? I had to. I'm like, boobs will come back. It's all good. And I gave her permission to cry. And I was happy that she took that invitation and she broke down. And I was in excruciating pain and trying to hold her and trying to not show her that I was in huge, huge pain. But yeah, it's hard. But I'm very, very grateful for everyone in the community in Squamish that showed up for me and my family and my parents. And my ex-husband and his wife, they were very supportive as well. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
think that's the aspect of community, right? We are nothing without community.
yeah.
And I will die on that hill.
Oh,
Like,
100%.
community, it's so important to have your people. It's so, so, so crucial to have those people. If you don't have it, find those people, create those relationships,
Yeah,
build those connections.
yeah.
Like, period. Oh my gosh. I think in general, not just when things are bad, but also in the good
Oh,
times, but
100%. And we can't
especially,
do this alone. It takes a village,
yeah,
literally, right?
I, s-
And we need to bring this back,
yeah, I
to
say
share
that
this
all the time.
joy and to support each other in the hardest time as well, right?
Yeah, I say it all the time. It takes a village to be a human being. It
100%.
takes, and I know not a lot of people have it, but it's so important to find it. If you don't have it now, go out and try seeking that, building
Yes.
connections, socializing, getting out there into your communities, being connected with people professionally, maybe that's what it is to start with, and then building further connections from there, your friends, family, whatever it is, you need to find those people because you need it. We need it. We all need it. No matter even how much support you have, we all need levels of community in our life. And I think it's one thing that we not a lot of people have and they struggle. That's
Yeah.
why there's so much suffering and pain happening in our world today. A big part of it is that people are alone. And this, again, bringing it back to the podcast, is why I even created it in the first place. I'm meant to do life alone. And so by hearing, stories on here and hearing the rawness of it, I really hope you can relate to it and that you can even find some sort of belonging, even connection, because we all need that too. I think that's a basic, fundamental human
Oh,
need,
yeah. We are
is
wired
that.
for connection. So,
Yeah, and so that's what I'm trying to create here too, even though we're not face to face with everyone who's listening, but it's the community aspect of it, right? And I'm so big on that. And I didn't realize that either until I went through my whole journey. But even to what you're sharing, right? Like without community, we are nothing.
oh,
And
yeah.
that really shows with your story. And I know you're so big in your community there in Squamish. And so to have that, like, wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, which, made me very not only grateful but humble as
Yeah.
well. People would cook for me and not only me, but my parents and my daughter and like cook meals for the four of us and drop it off. People I had no idea, like I'd never met them. I don't know who they are. And it was just,
Oh,
I don't know what to say.
that's so sweet.
Besides a huge thank you.
Yeah.
And so it also, it puts you in a beautiful place where you want to pass it along, to pay it forward, and it just opens your eyes as well to what are we doing that we are not supporting each other. Life is hard enough already. I would say that, like, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Of
yeah,
course, that's beautiful. Um, let's transition a little bit. Going to start to transition more into your transition period, but also want to talk about vulnerability for a second because it's such a big part of what we're sharing right here. Like you being vulnerable to share your story, it's a big part of our life, professionally and personally. So we kind of touched on this, but you sit with others in their vulnerability. What was it like when you had to become the vulnerable one, or when you had to become, I guess, the client, patient, if you will? What was that like being on both ends of it?
not easy. I'm way better holding space for people, and I do way better on that end. It is not easy to be vulnerable and to ask for help and to accept that it's okay for you to ask for help, and that doesn't change who you are or diminish who you are in any way. So which I'm grateful for that lesson too. It was a hard lesson, but a very positive one to be like, okay, I don't know how to ask for help, but I had to learn. And it was really nice to learn that it was okay and that people will show up for you, and that makes them feel good too, right? Somebody at some point told me, don't take away the privilege of me supporting you and loving you. Let people love you. You're loved. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting point of view. And at some point, I allowed people to love me, and it was beautiful. And I think that made my capacity to love others, which is already quite huge, even bigger. So I always say I am grateful for cancer, which sounds a bit contradictory, but I've learned so much, so much. And I'm not the same person in a good way. So, yeah.
I love all of that. All of that. I think it's so beautiful. And I think, yeah, it sounds contradicting, right? You're grateful for cancer. I say the same thing about my vision loss. I'm so grateful. It was the most traumatic experience of my life and all of that, but it was also the biggest blessing. And I
Yeah.
would say I would not be sitting here right now with the podcast, being a counselor. None of that would have happened if whatever happened for me 8 years ago didn't happen. And so, as gut wrenching it was and still is, because I still face it, and just like you're still navigating it.
Oh,
But
yes.
at the same time, if that none of that happened, I wouldn't be where I am in life, and not even just education, training, or professionally, like more so even personally.
Oh, yeah.
Like just who I am as a person, the way I show up, my values, really getting to know myself, the meaning I've made out of my life since then. And I know I can probably say the same for you as well, like you're saying, right?
100%.
And
Yes.
so I'm like, I am so grateful for that. Yes, there's pain and there's suffering there, but, and again, going back to the both can be true at the same time. Obviously, I wish things were different. And same with you. Obviously, who wants to have cancer? However,
I don't want to have cancer, but I did like things that everything that came
yeah.
with the cancer,
And
right?
I mean,
Which,
again, this is a whole
yeah.
separate thing, but I do have a belief that we come to Earth side and we go through challenges and hardships and all these things to be able to overcome them. I think that's the point of life, of growing and evolving. And some things are very tragic, and I don't have answers for that, but I do believe that we're meant to, I always say it's like a homecoming, and you use the word rebirth.
100%.
And I feel like, because when we're born, we're not like this. We don't have any of this stuff. We don't have the programming or all the beliefs, all other people's stuff on us. We're so pure. I always say that when we're born, right? When a baby's born, we're just so pure. And then we go through life, which I feel like we're meant to only then be reborn, our homecoming, coming back to who we truly are without all the stuff that happened from then to now adulthood. And
Yes.
so I think that piece of it is just so, so amazing. Um, so you talked about one day at a time before, and I think that's such a important aspect of all of this too, because we always say just taking it one day at a time. What can you focus on today? And not even just with cancer or health, but I think in general, right? Like when you have a lot of stress and anxiety about just life. Life is hard. And so you're just like, okay, what can I do in one day that can help me move the needle forward, even if it's 1%? And so for you, what did getting through quote unquote one day at a time actually look like for you throughout this whole journey?
Oh, I mean, I worked with what I had in front of me. So facts, right? Because in life in general, but because we're talking about cancer here, with the cancer journey, you don't know what's coming next or what's going to happen in your treatment. There are a lot of steps that you can't rush. So I needed to wait for the biopsy. I needed to wait for the surgery. I needed to wait for the results of the biopsy after the surgery. I could stay in my mind like trying to go to steps forward, but it's self-torture, right? So I'm like, okay, I don't know how else to explain. Like I was in the present moment. So I would, I think consciously, I would just have that awareness. I don't have control over this. And you were talking about needing control, and you're not the only one. We all have different degrees of necessity of control. Uh, Cancer, is very humbling because you cannot, there's nothing you can control in that journey. So
Right.
you do learn to be like, okay, whatever comes next. Like you just learn to let go, and you learn not to control, and you learn to just be in the present and to value the present, and to not to think about the future because you might not even have a future. So I grounded myself, and I was paying more attention to the people in front of me and my community, nature, and my daughter and myself, and what was the relationship that I had with myself and my partner at the time, and what actually mattered. And so I think I connected with the present moment, if that makes sense.
That's beautiful. It's really hard for a lot of people to do that, myself included. So I think that's really amazing that you were able to ground yourself and be present in the moment, because the more we think about the future and the unknown, it's going to cause more torture and suffering, unnecessary suffering. And yeah, that's
And it's
really,
something that I carry with my life now. I always say that life doesn't stop for you to have cancer. You have cancer, then life continues, right? And the challenges outside of cancer continue to happen. And I've have used and I continue to use that skill that I've learned during the cancer journey of letting go, that I can't control certain things, and it makes life so much easier. Like it's just, oh my God. My daughter decided to move countries and stay there forever. And I'm like, okay, so, the empty nest syndrome, why do you think I got a dog? I was lonely and I'm single. I went through a horrible breakup and everything happened at the same time, and I was
Wow.
dealing with cancer. And so you
Wow.
learn to let go. It gets lighter on your shoulders.
Yeah, there's so many aspects, and you're a testament to life continues on. It doesn't matter. Cancer doesn't care you had a breakup or you have a daughter that's moving across the country, that you're going to be an empty nester, that this and that. Life rolls on, cancer or not cancer, right? This is just anything in life. We're obviously talking about cancer because of Raquel's story, but
But vision loss or whatever it is that you're experiencing, whatever health situation or life transition or whatever it is,
yeah.
life doesn't stop. You still have to work. I was working during my treatment. I was
Yeah.
still having to do my laundry and cook for myself,
That,
and do everything.
that stuff never stops, and we're forced to then having to face that. We have to face it head on, and we have to find the tools and the coping mechanisms, the community to help us through that. And we have to start rebuilding ourselves because we're not the same person, right? There's a before and there's an after, and it's finding a new way of life, and that's going to look different to every single person. But it's
Yeah.
really finding that and really allowing yourself to, I'm not such a big component of everything happens for a reason. The quote, I used to be way long ago, and I know there's differing opinions about that. I don't think that's necessarily always true, but I do believe there are lessons, so many lessons that can be learned from the
Oh,
hardships that we
absolutely.
face. Like
Yeah.
you've shared so many throughout,
Yes.
your story in itself, and I am a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's meaning or a purpose or everything happens for a reason, but there are a lot of lessons necessarily. I don't think it's so black and white as people use it.
Of course, yeah. And I think to what you're saying, the opportunity, I think everything in life is an opportunity for us to learn something,
Yeah,
and usually about ourselves,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I think, we have the free will to just not learn if we don't want to, right?
Yeah.
So
But that's
sometimes people
also
do
like,
a lot of stuff and then they're like, oh, I don't know. But I get your point, because I also agree that I think you can learn more if you intentionally want to sit and analyze that and look for the lessons. But even if you avoid or deny or whatever it is, I think it's almost impossible not to learn even a little bit.
I think what happens with that phrase, everything happens for a reason, is like you think about the very tragic things, and it's like
Yeah.
when it comes to that. So I think it's not so black and white. There's so much nuance around
Oh,
it, but I
yes.
think people use that too loosely.
I
It's
see.
like, oh, well, someone died in a tragic car accident. Use that as an example. It's like, well, everything happens for a reason, or someone in your life died. And I think that's where that phrase gets thrown around too loosely, and that can really disrupt someone's entire
Oh,
life, especially when it comes to tragic things like that. And so,
because
yeah,
it could be dismissive, right? Like he can be a bit dismissive
yeah.
of the severity.
Dismissive, but I do believe that we are meant to learn and grow and evolve. And I do
Yeah.
believe, I think it comes into more of like maybe a just connection to the universe on more of a spiritual lens as well, is that we're not meant to just
Yeah.
stay stagnant. I don't believe that. We're meant to face hardships. And the only way we're going to grow and evolve and become better versions is if we go through hardship, right? Because like we're talking about, we need both. We need the pain and the suffering and the darkness to be able to see the light, the joy, the happiness. If we didn't have contrast,
How do we have the perspective?
yeah,
And 100% I agree with that. And by going through the things that we don't prefer, we understand what are the things that we do prefer, right?
exactly,
And
yeah.
we
It's the ebb and flow.
that's reality,
Yeah.
right?
It's the ebb and flow. It's the yin yang. It's just, it's part of life. And I
Yes.
think part of it is to learn how to hold both of them. And that's, I think, why we're here, and we're meant to be able to hold the duality of life, because life is going to keep on lifing.
So 100%.
You shared something earlier. You maybe have even shared it, but you mentioned the good parts of chemo or cancer. You said something. Is it different to anything that
Not
you've?
chemo, but cancer.
Oh, cancer. Yeah,
Chemo,
cancer.
I don't know if this, yeah.
Yeah, we talk a lot about post-traumatic growth on this show, and you've kind of
Yes.
beautifully just weaved that into our conversations.
Yeah.
But when you mentioned the good parts about cancer, what were you referring to when you said that?
I think, yeah, I mean, again, so many things on that, but it it taught me how to stick to myself regardless of anything, because very easily we abandon ourselves and we betray ourselves. I've learned to say no. I've learned to set very healthy boundaries. I've learned to really love myself and take care of myself and even accept myself, which is a hard, and not completely, like, of course, I'll have for the rest of my life, I'll have things to work on, of course, as we all do, but it helped me not only have all of those perspectives, but also be more human and more loving and compassionate. And I think I already had a purpose with being a counselor, a purpose of helping people and being there for my community and all of that. I think that got even bigger and wider. I think experiencing a cancer diagnosis made that wish and desire and purpose 1,000 times bigger. That would be a bit of a sum up.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love it so much. One final question, more of words of encouragement. I always like to leave the listeners with something. We'll do that and then we'll do the rapid fire. But if someone listening today has just heard the words, "You have cancer," what would you want them to know?
To know,
What would you say to them? Yeah, anything, someone's newly diagnosed.
just, I would say, fight it. First of all, go fight it. And it doesn't have to be the end. It could be, but it doesn't have to be the end. And I think I would ask them, what really matters for you right now, and stick to that. Like,
Yeah. Thank you.
and laugh about it. Just find the
Yeah.
joy in it.
Here's the best
Because that happens.
medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Use humor.
Because that wouldn't be me if I didn't say that.
Yeah. No, I think that's important. I really
Yeah,
do.
no, it's,
I
you
think
know,
it's important, and I can use that. I've learned so much from you, Raquel, just in this whole conversation is, I'm stop taking life so seriously.
yeah,
Like, I say that to
that's
myself and it's something I'm working on and I encourage everyone else to, but even to what you just shared, right? Like we take life way too damn seriously.
Yeah.
And for what? We're all here very temporary. We're not here for
Oh,
long.
yeah.
If you think of it in the grand scheme of things, some
Yeah.
people here are a lot shorter than others, and that's their journey and their story. But we're only here temporary. We're here on borrowed time,
And
and
happiness, is medicine, literally. Like, happiness is medicine, joy is medicine. And it even, helps that our research is around out there about the impact. If you take this whole journey more lightly and with more positivity, let's put it, under that umbrella there, the way your body is impacted by chemotherapy specifically is very different. So a lot of people are not as affected by the physical symptoms of the chemotherapy if they have a better relationship with it or a better look at it, at the whole, journey. So
right.
that's what I would recommend. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to do a quick rapid fire before we close off. Before we get into that, I just want to say thank you so much, Raquel, for sharing and sitting with me. Such a great conversation. You shed so much light and just inspiration and very empowering the way you took cancer and faced it head on, and here you are now. Just really grateful. And I think this conversation will land for a lot of people, a lot of the listeners. And so really appreciate you taking the time out and sharing your heart and vulnerability. I know it's not always easy, but I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. And
Yeah.
I appreciate you and the space. And you make things very easy. And it helps too that we've been friends for a long time and shared a lot of very vulnerable things
Yes.
before. So
Right.
thank you for that.
Yeah. And so just for everyone, I will put Raquel's information in the show notes if you want to reach out to her for her work, get to know her a little bit more through the work that she does. And if you're seeking professional support, Raquel is, you're open to new clients. Okay.
Yes, open to new clients and very much supporting a lot of cancer patients right now.
Okay, amazing. I'll definitely make sure that's in there. Okay, Raquel, this or that,
Okay.
rapid fire, sunrise or sunset?
Ooh, sunset.
Have a plan or be spontaneous?
Spontaneous.
Deep conversations or playful banter?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I think right now in my life, playful banter.
Morning person or night owl?
Right now, morning person.
Ask for help or figure it out yourself?
Figure out myself.
Comfort zone or take the risk?
Oh, take the risk, always.
Window seat or aisle seat?
For the view, window seat. For the convenience, aisle seat.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in. I'm really excited to get this aired out. And yeah, everyone take care.